Okay, guys, so I thought I would do another masterclass video. This one is going to be on fatigue. Now, fatigue, I want you to think of as like your energy resource for the week. If you ever hit 10 stacks of fatigue, it means that you're going to fall over and start doing death saving rolls, which is best 2 out of 3. Hit a nat 20, you automatically live. Hit a nat 1, you automatically die. And you need to get basically DC's 9, so you need to get I think 10 or higher to survive. Or it might be you need to get a 9 or higher in order to survive on your best 2 out of 3 rolls, okay? So you want to avoid that at all costs. So let's talk about fatigue. Let's talk about how people get it and how you get rid of it and why the management of it and maximization of it is so important. So, how you would gain fatigue in this game. You'd gain fatigue through, if you go into combat. Going into combat automatically grants you 2 stacks of fatigue. If you lose combat and get knocked out, essentially, you automatically gain another 3 stacks of fatigue, I believe. If you win combat, you don't take that extra 3. Let's see, gathering and crafting. We've already talked about those in the other Mastercraft videos, but essentially each of those, one set of each of those actions without perks that kind of reduce fatigue is going to be 2 stacks of fatigue as well. Traveling is something in this game I could make a video on, but I'm not because it's going to be automated, I think, in the very near future, so I won't bother with that. But traveling is something that would grant stacks of fatigue, and usually traveling is going to grant you somewhere on average from about 1 to 2 stacks of fatigue. If you roll really poorly, you can gain 3. So you have to be very careful with that and very mindful of that, which is why you don't want to travel on 7 stacks of fatigue, because if you get a 3, you fall over, you're instantly doing death saving rolls. It's not a good time for anybody. What else I'm trying to think of can give you fatigue? If you take certain actions, like, maybe you're interacting with NPCs and doing certain actions. There's a NPC where in the Seabrook Village where you can interact with him if you want to learn, gates or whatever, and you have to punch a rock, and each punch on the rock tends to give you a stack of fatigue as you attempt to break the rock with your rolls and your bonuses and things of that nature again. And so just keep in mind that fatigue is very important. How fatigue can also impact you is if you're a combatant. When you go into combat with anything more than 0 stacks of fatigue, your natural base AC will automatically be reduced by per stack of fatigue. So if I had an AC base of, let's say, 10, which is pretty good, and it means that, like, if somebody rolls lower than 10 when they try to attack me with something that has, weak accuracy or whatever, I get to free dodge, which is awesome. But if, let's say, I have 5 stacks of fatigue, that 5 fatigue is going to impact my AC, and I'm going to start, instead of with 10 AC, I'm going to start with 5 AC. So it's very important to keep your AC in mind whenever you start fights as a combatant. I mean, your fatigue in mind when you start fights as a combatant. So now that we kind of understand a better understanding of how fatigue works within this system, let's talk about how to maximize it. And the way to better understand how to maximize fatigue is going to be able to understand the amounts of fatigue reduction you have available to you as a player, okay? So I'm going to go through these, and we're going to talk about some of these, the different ways in which you can reduce fatigue, all right? So first things first, let's pretend right now that my number says 9. It says 9 fatigue, okay? Every session start, that means that when session turnover happens every single week at, like, basically Monday, and, like, we'll say 2 a.m. or something like that Monday. Actually, technically, 2 a.m. EST Monday is usually kind of when it hits around that time or whatever. The session turnover will happen. I will gain my experience and all that stuff for the session turnover, and automatically I drop 2 stacks of fatigue just for the session turnover. That's the first thing to keep in mind. So we're automatically losing 2 always. The second thing is, if you own a house, you can click on that house and post a roleplay on, like, you'll click on the mailbox near your house if your name is on the house, and you'll post a roleplay, and you'll have a chance to reduce your fatigue by 1. Okay, so that's not guaranteed, but that is, we'll say that's somewhere around maybe a 50% chance, right? Maybe a 50% chance of getting that one. And then if your home village has a hospital, and if you're in Mr. Leaf, which is the only 2 villages you can basically base in right now, and nothing crazy has happened yet, means that both villages have access to the hospital. So because both villages have access to the hospital, it means that you will have a chance at the start of the session as well to reduce your fatigue by 1. And that's nothing, there's not a role play involved with that, it's just a natural thing that happens on session turnover. There's a little roll on the back end that happens to see if you can reduce your fatigue by 1 for the hospital. So With those two in mind, the house and the hospital, between the two of them, you're usually going to reduce your fatigue by, at least one of those are usually going to happen. So you're probably going to, your chances of reducing your fatigue are probably going to be around, you're probably going to reduce about 3 at the start of every session if you own a house and if you're just playing the game, essentially, okay? Now, so that's just at start of session, right? So that's 3 at the start of session, essentially. 3 to 4 start of the session, okay? Or we'll say, if you want to be nice, we'll say 2 to 4 at the start of the session. Average of that will be 3, right? So each session, in the middle of the session, before the session ends, so let's say a session starts on Monday and it ends on like Sunday night. Usually Saturday, Sunday, if you're in the Mist Village, everybody will get together at this place called the Mana's Bar, and they'll role play together, and they'll do a relaxation roll. And the relaxation roll usually has a pretty decent chance of succeeding, and so that'd be another way for you to reduce your fatigue by 1. Now, that's not a session turnover. That's not something that's automatic. That's something you have to role play. And if you're part of the Mist Village, you'll kind of see that announcement and be like, oh, okay, I need to go to Mana's Bar if I want to go do this, and Saturday, Sunday. And it's, you know, there's no, like, deep time requirement or whatever. It's just, you know, just stop by, interact with people, role play, have a good time, and maybe you can reduce your fatigue by 1. And then somebody will put you in a ticket for that, and won't worry about that, because you don't have to make the ticket, somebody else will, and they'll just add you to it. And you already know a little bit about how to make tickets from the other Mastercraft videos, so we're good on that, right? So everything's so, thank goodness, you know, we got the other Masterclass video. I keep saying craft, but Masterclass videos. If you're in the Leave Village, you don't have the bar, right, when I tell people to get on that. So you can just do a relaxation roll with others if you want. Just get a decent-sized group together, maybe around, like, you know, 5, 6 players, whatever, and you guys just, you know, say you're hanging out and something like that, and, you know, somebody will make a ticket, and you'll see about, you know, going for it there. Now, there is another thing you can do. This is the or to the bar or the relaxation roll, which is you can have XXX relations with somebody, you know, at a chance for reducing fatigue. But this does come at the risk of pregnancy. And the way that that's going to work, and I'll show you really fast in the game to keep that one kind of simple, is 2 players will, you know, decide to XXX, and what they'll do is they'll go to the dice roller, and, you know, they'll have a number of dice to roll, which is 1 out of 20, and they'll click on something called performance. And they will roll that performance, and what they get, so I roll my performance here, as you can see, I got a 14. 14 is actually, I think, good enough, so 14 I would reduce. Another thing about performance is, performance when you do this with somebody else, that's how you perform your XXX, your role impacts them, their role impacts you. So if I rolled 14 and that was good enough to reduce their fatigue by 1, which I think it is, I think the DC is like 13 or something, their fatigue goes down by 1. If they roll like a 3, my fatigue does not go down by anything, because essentially they performed horribly and I had a bad time, but I performed good and they had a great time, you know? And then after all that's said and done, then you have to do a pregnancy roll. So, and by the way, this doesn't matter if it's boy, boy, girl, 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 boy, none of that stuff matters. So I would have gotten a 15, and that means that I would not be pregnant, or they would not be pregnant, whatever you want to stress it. Whoever rolls, this person doesn't, you know, whatchamacallit. But yes, I wouldn't be that, because the DC for that is like, I want to say it's like 7. It might be 7. So it's pretty low. So it's pretty easy to pass it. But yes. And we're not really going to get deep into how much deeper that goes. So that's that. Now let's talk about other ways to reduce fatigue. All right. So far again, we've got the 2 to 4 from just session start. We've got the 1 from role playing with friends, or either, you know, XXXing. So we're looking at somewhere around 2 to 5 now, right? 2 to 5 stacks of fatigue. The next thing we can do is you can get healing done on you. And healing can be done with a specific jutsu to reduce your fatigue by a certain amount. So we're going to click on that jutsu. We're going to take a look at it real quick and see what that's about. So we're going to go to techniques, and not everybody's going to have this jutsu. You're going to need to find somebody who's a medic. But it's this jutsu here. And it says, this technique heals a target for 8 health and -1 fatigue. And this can only be lower player's fatigue -2 each session. Okay, you don't actually need admin assistance to use this perk anymore. It used to be you had to make tickets for it. Now we don't have to do that anymore. We can simply just walk over to a place that has a heart. We can double click on the heart. It'll say healing tool. I can put whoever I'm healing on, whether it's myself or somebody else. I'm not sure if this is working yet, so good luck. I can't remember if this is fixed yet. This may not be fixed yet, so if this isn't fixed yet by the time of this video, that means that you're going to need to put this in here, type a role play, type yourself, leave this at 1, and then go, and then do it another time to, you know, keep going or whatever. And each person can be healed by the base level of this jutsu, which is the one I have right now, by two stacks of fatigue. So that means I could cast this twice, and I have 66 chakra currently, so I could cast this twice easily for the cost of 10 chakra. Very simple, very self-explanatory. Now, if I possess, and not everybody does, but some people do, if I possess this perk here, which is in the medical tree, which is called Physician's Vitality, Healing Restore can now be additional time each time on each player per session. A good bit of medics are going to have this one for sure. So Physician's Vitality means that instead of that 2 that you saw only can only be used twice, or -2 fatigue per person that you use it on, now it can go down to -3. So that means that that would cost me a total of 15 chakra, but I could do 15 chakra for person A, I could pay 15 chakra for person B, 15 chakra for person C, 15 chakra per person like D, and that would be like 60 chakra, and I would still have 6 left, basically, as we could look at my chakra and we see I have 66 in total. Now, that's going to be -3 fatigue. So you can basically guarantee, especially if you're in the Mist Village, if you're in the Leaf, it might be a little bit harder, I'm not going to lie. Medics are, it's complicated. Let's just say that for people to want to be medics, it means that they don't really want to necessarily fight all the time. And Leaf tends to have a lot more people who want to just kind of play more combat heavy, and I feel like Mist tends to have people also who, they have more of a group of people who may not want to fight all the time, who are willing to just, you know, heal. Because if I were to heal somebody, that costs me my chakra, which means that I probably am not going to fight that session. Now, technically, there is a food item I could consume, but it's a bit wonky. I'll show you real fast since we've already got all this up anyway. I'm gonna pull it up really quick because again, this is supposed to be a Mastercraft video, so you know we gotta keep it real, right? We gotta keep it real. So let's go to baked goods here. This is a good that somebody could make. Which is, it fully restores your chakra, but I believe you, oh man, they edited this and I don't remember exactly how this works, but essentially I think when you use this, you get your chakra back, but you can't go into combat anymore. So that means that if I went into, so basically if I go, so for people who don't have medics, right, this would be a Leaf thing, nobody in Mist is ever probably going to use this, but essentially in Leaf, you could have a medic, go into combat, do their combat mission for the week or whatever, come back out of combat, eat baked goods, build their chakra back up, and then heal people, and they're not going back into combat again. I believe that's how that works. Either way, you don't need to worry about this in the Mist Village at all. If you're in the Leaf Village, you might need to worry about this a little bit, but yeah, it is what it is. Okay, so remember, again, we're up to 2 to 5 for the reduction of fatigue, right? We have the, as we've gone through everything, we went to 2 to 5, and then 2 of, so now we're going to add on healing on there. Now again, if somebody's a C rank medic, and I'm going to be honest with you right now, you're never going to see a C rank medic in this game unless they are a non-combatant. So I don't know if Leaf has a lot of non-combatants. I don't think they do, which means that Mist Village probably will have these people, and they will have people who can heal you technically 4 times. Now, just a heads up, the better way to do that is going to be to have the D rank people heal you like 1 to 2 to 3 or something like that, because it's 5 each. And then for the C rank medical people, and when I say C rank, I'm not talking about like your rank that's right here. I'm talking about your specialist rank, because as you can see, if you see Specialist 2 on somebody, this means they're C rank for those techniques. And you can see here, I'm just Specialist 1 for medical, so I don't have the C rank technique, even if my overall total rank is C. Which just means I can buy the C rank Specialist perks if I really wanted to, but I'm not going to. But anyway, so you're gonna want to get your first 2 to 3 heals from somebody who has the lower cost D rank version, and then you should find somebody who has the C rank version, which allows them to heal you a 4th time, but it costs them 7 chakra. So you're just a heads up. So again, 2 to 5 we've already talked about. Then you could possibly reduce your fatigue by 4 by finding medics, right? So that's about that's another 4 on there. Keep that in mind, right? And I want to say that I think also there's food to reduce fatigue too, but honestly I feel like that's kind of a waste, because if you're doing that, then it's like, bro, like you could be using that food for like combat or for other stuff, like instead of like trying to reduce fatigue. The only place this could be important in like surgeries maybe, but outside of that, it's not that great. Okay, so let's talk about this one more time. So we've gone through this really quick. I'm just going to use this role play thing as a way to keep a note, right? So we said we had 2 to 5 fatigue from the start. We had the session start. We said we had the house. We had the hospital, right? And then we've got healers for another possible, we'll say 3 to 4. Okay, what does this mean? This means that on any given session, you should theoretically be able to reduce your fatigue by around, let's say, half of this. So we'll say maybe 3. We'll say on average we could say maybe this is like, let's see, 2, 7. We'll say this is on average 3.5, right? And then we'll say this is on average going to be around. Oh, almost forgot the bar. So we'll put the bar, bar sex, whatever, or bar or XXX. Okay, so. And so that actually would make this go up even higher to 2 to 6, which is just going to be an average of 4 here. So, and then we'll say healers, again, probably like 3 to 4. So we'll just do like 3.5, whatever. We'll just do 3 to keep it simple. So, 4, 3, 7. So on average, your fatigue is going to be able to be reduced by 7 every single session. So what does that mean for you? That means that in order to maximize your fatigue, you should never be let me try to break this down a little bit more. Okay, so in order to maximize your fatigue, right, it means that you need to be trying to take advantage of all the fatigue options to reduce your fatigue per session, number 1. But number 2, it means that at the start of every session, you want to go into it in a state where you can get the most fatigue reduction that could possibly happen. So what that means is, at the start of every before a session ends, if you want to maximize your fatigue, you want it to be at about 3 or a little bit higher, 3 to 4. And the reason for that is when the session turnover happens, you're automatically going to lose 2. So you're going to go from if you're at 3, you're automatically lose 2 and go to 1. And your hospital roll is going to happen. You're going to go from 1 to either 0 or you're just going to stay at 1. If you had less than that 3 fatigue and you're at 2, session turnover, you go down to 0, and then the hospital roll, let's say it's a success, you just lost -1 fatigue. It's just free fatigue that just went nowhere. Then you can't bank it, you can't save it, you just lost it. You wasted it. So that's 1 extra stack of fatigue you could have used the session prior to help yourself, right? So the way in which you carry yourself with your fatigue is you need to keep in mind that every single session you want to be doing enough so that you're taking advantage of all the fatigue reduction that exists within the session itself, and at the same time you want to be at a point where you're at about at least 3 or higher at the end of the session. That way when the session turnover happens, you can't miss out on the automatic hospital roll and the automatic turnover, so that you're not missing out on that. So if we wanted to look at it correctly, let's say mine is 0 right now, and I haven't taken part of anything, even though we're in the middle of the session, so we already know session turnover is open, so that's good. And we know that hospital roll's already been done, so that's good, right? So so remember, keep in mind, we need to finish this session at least 3 in order to be ready for the next session. So how would I go about doing that? Well, let's say I just go and gather a shitload of iron or something, or no, we'll say I gather a bunch of titanium. Because remember, based on the other Mastercraft videos, we know that titanium is something that we might want to build gear, right? And then again, there's other resources like oak. Maybe I'll go log and get some oak or whatever. So let's say I'm going to do oak here again. Try to branch out a little bit. Let's say I do that about 6 times, right? So usually that's going to equal 12 stacks of fatigue for me. Remember, we have those perks that assist us, right? Those perks are going to assist us, and those perks are going to bring me, the stamina 3 perk is going to bring me back down to 9 stacks of fatigue. So I would gain 9 stacks of fatigue. I would go from 0 to 9 if I started at 0. So I would be 0 to 9 stacks of fatigue. Now, here's the thing. For the end of session, let's say I do Mana's Bar. I'll go down from 8 to 9 stacks of fatigue. I'll go from 9 to 8 stacks of fatigue, right? We'll say that reduced me down to 8 stacks of fatigue. Then let's say I want to heal myself 3 times. I'm a medic, right? So then I'll go from 8 to 5 stacks of fatigue, right? And now, let's say I click on my house. The big thing about the house is the house needs to be clicked on before Wednesday. So the session turnover is Monday. You need to click on it, I think, within before Wednesday. But let's say I click on my house and I'm reducing my fatigue even more, and I go from 5 to 4, okay? And have I taken advantage of every single fatigue reduction that I could possibly do for the week? I've done the healing. I've done the relaxation / Mana's Bar. I've done the housing. And so I'm ending this session at 4. I believe we did exactly what we're supposed to do according to the fatigue reduction, right? We've done everything we could possibly do. Healing. We've done the Mana's Bar by role-playing with other people. We've done the home village. We've done the hospital, and we've done the home, and we're good. So now we're going to end this session with 4 stacks of fatigue, and then we'll go on to the next session, and we'll possibly get a 2 We'll get a 2 automatic from the session turnover to bring us from 4 down to 2, and then also we'll get our random automatic hospital roll and maybe end up at 1, and we'll start the session with 1, and we'll be good to go. And that's a perfect usage of fatigue management. And you see how I gathered to the maximum amount with my perks in order to accomplish all of this. Now again, there's other perks that are going to reduce fatigue. There are some miscellaneous perks that can reduce fatigue from gathering and crafting and things of that nature, and you need to take a look at that for yourself. Maybe I'll do another video about deeper perks and taking a closer look at that for gathering and crafting. I don't know. We'll take a look at that later. But this is just kind of a general basis of how fatigue management works, and how to maximize fatigue. And I want to be very clear. If you're not doing this every single session, you are not doing the very most you can do for yourself and for your village. If you're not using these fatigue reduction things, taking advantage of all these sources, and if you're not if you're ending sessions with like lower fatigue than turnovers and things of that nature, you're just wasting all this extra fatigue that you could be using to help other people and help yourself and get yourself and other people ahead in your village, or push the story along, or things of that nature. It's very important that you do this. This is a very important mechanic, and that's why I believe this video is a little bit longer than I like for it to be. I'm sorry about that, but I really wanted this to really hammer this home. So I think I'm going to end the video here. I kind of hope I've kind of broken down a little bit more about fatigue and how to master fatigue, and how to utilize it to the best of its abilities. I will say one more thing before I end this video. If you are doing death saving rolls and you are past 10 stacks of fatigue, the DC for the death saving roll gets higher with every stack of fatigue. And what that means is if you somehow ended up at 15 stacks of fatigue and did a death saving roll, your DC, instead of being like 9, would be an extra 5 higher, so your DC would be like getting like 14, which really you're just gonna get smoked. One more thing, again, traveling. Remember, traveling fatigue is usually gonna be somewhere between 1 to 3, on average 2, but you should not be traveling on 7 stacks of fatigue, because if you get a 3, it's happened to a lot of people. I don't care if it's a 5% chance, don't do it. If you get a 3, you're going to fall over. You're going to be starting making death saving rolls, and that's not a fun time for anybody. For the people who are watching, who just are probably lusting for blood and looking at you like a dumbass and waiting for you to die. So that's the end of this video on Fatigue Masterclass. I hope everybody enjoyed it. I'm going to try to think of some more Masterclass videos. I'm really loving these videos. You guys have a great day.